Good morning. Got a 2006 Subaru Outback in the shop. It's here for a head gasket job, but in this video I'm going to show the engine removal because I usually do this with the engine out and it makes things a lot easier. So let's get started. So this job can be done without removing the engine, but it only takes a little bit more time to remove the engine, and what it costs in time, it saves in frustration, because trying to deal with these heads when it's so close to the frame rail is really annoying. I used to do it like this in the past and I learned my lesson. But ever since I started removing the motors, I've been a lot happier. So we're gonna start like any other motor swap and just start draining the fluids. And then we'll take a look from the bottom. We gotta remove the drive shafts, the steering, stuff like that. Let's get started. So I got the coolant and the oil draining. And just looking underneath the car, some of the extra steps here we need to do to drop the motor. Move the CV axles. We're gonna remove the steering column right there. This CV axle. And then here, we gotta take the drive shaft off, which is pretty easy. The thing that makes all of this easier is that I'm in the American Southwest, so nothing is really rusted. I mean, if you're in a rust belt, yeah, this starts to get complicated. So the reason I do it like this is because this is a camber bolt, and I prefer not to mess with this if I don't have to. So, because it's not rusty, this came off pretty easily. I use a little claw tool to separate this, and this whole assembly is going to stay in the car, and this, I'm just going to have it like this. When we drop the motor, it will come out with the car. No need to remove it from the transmission. So for the steering here, I marked the shaft with whiteout, and then you can look from the bottom. This is going to allow me to put it back on exactly where I pulled it off. So what I'm going to do here is completely remove this lower bolt, and then I'm going to loosen this upper bolt right there, and then just slide it upwards. And then after that, the transmission cooler lines, I'm going to take one off on this end, and then the other one off on that end. Loop this one here, loop that one there. And it'll look a little something like that. The reason this axle's out, I just noticed that the little pin, or the little ring, is not in, and it just slid right out. It's supposed to be a lock ring right here. I think the only reason it wasn't leaking is because it's spring-loaded inside here. It pushes up against the transmission. I'm gonna have to fix that before it goes back in. The next steps, I'm gonna remove this piece of exhaust right here. And then we're gonna take this shield off, and then the drive shaft unbolts from the rear here, where it goes into the diff, and it just slides out of the transmission right there. And then up front here, I'm gonna grab my light. Front here, there's a ground that goes to the chassis there. Another one on this side, and the lower radiator hose, which appears to be leaking, so we'll have to fix that too. And then I think that's everything on the bottom. We'll do all the rest of this stuff when it's on the engine table. Alright, that's pretty much everything on the bottom. I removed those heat shields just to make it a little easier later. But we'll deal with these pipes once this is on the engine table. But let's go up top and start working up there. So up top now, the intake has to come apart. The fuel lines have to come apart. You got to remove this intercooler so we can get to the mount and some of the wire harness stuff back there. Upper radiator hose comes off. AC gets discharged and I unbolt those. This gets unbolted and we kind of just move it over here and we leave the power steering alone attached to that. We'll deal with that later when the motor's out. Wiring harness gets disconnected. And I believe that's it. Probably a couple other things. Oh, this harness gets removed. Just little things here and there, and it's ready to come out. So dumb. Basically, that slides off that direction. I'm gonna lift this thing, this tab right here. Alright, quick check-in. Pretty much got everything disconnected here from the top. So we got the harness disconnected, power steering, intake boot. Over here we got this harness here, AC lines disconnected. Fuel lines are disconnected. You saw I used that tool. It's a special fuel line tool. All I need to do now is disconnect these two from the heater. And let me just set up the table and we can start unbolting the subframe from the bottom and lowering the engine or raising the car. Alright, this is the setup with the table. And I got my scissor jacks under here. And I have some safety straps pulling the whole powertrain down to the table. So, what we're going to do... Hang on, let me set my light up. So what we're going to do on both sides is unbolt this bracket here with this arm. And then on the subframe, there's those two bolts right there. Right there and right there. Around both those, and then we can just go up with the car and the powertrain should stay on the table. And these ones back here on the transmission too. Forgot to mention that a second ago. And that's how you drop the motor on a Subaru. A lot of Subarus are pretty much the same. The non-turbo are a little easier to deal with. There's less, well, actually not really that much easier. It's because it's just got the intercooler that you have to deal with. And now that this is out, I'm gonna start disassembling it, but that's for a different video. So thanks for watching this one.